Nobody ever thought Jordan Love would be the guy. After being called a questionable draft choice for Green Bay, he silenced the entire league by throwing for 4,159 yards and 32 touchdowns in his first year as a starter. And it wasn't long before Green Bay put their money where their mouth was, paying him like the cornerstone of their future with a $220 million deal. But even now, the debate continues. Was this all part of a grand design, or was it just a shot in the dark that paid off? To find that answer, we need to return to Bakersfield, California, where Jordan Love's story began. He was raised in a close-knit family that instilled in him the values of discipline and accountability. My dad was a Bakersfield police officer, but like the nicest guy in the world, always smiling, always super happy, up, do the work, finish what you start. He had natural athletic ability, but there was nothing about him that suggested he was a prodigy. There were no viral highlight clips, no invitations to elite camps, and zero buzz among recruiters. He played several sports, kept to himself, and learned how to compete without an audience. Football was a passion for him, not an identity built for him. But during his high school years, his world was shattered by tragedy. Yeah, that was a difficult time. Obviously just losing my father, that was tough being 14 years old. The man I look up to, the man who raised me, losing a parent, it was very tough for me and my family. The death of his father forced him to mature in a hurry. And then when I lost my dad, that was world shaking upside down. I think that was a big eye-opening experience for me. The game of football transformed into something more profound. It offered him a structured routine and a sanctuary where he could find focus when the rest of his life felt chaotic. His coaches took note of his response to adversity. He didn't lash out, he didn't ask for pity, he just worked harder and listened more intently. He soaked up coaching with the awareness of someone who knew how precious every opportunity is. By the time Jordan fully committed to the quarterback position, he wasn't about flash, he was about dependability. Ended up sticking out that year and became the starting quarterback. That understated resilience would soon be put to the test on a high school gridiron, a place where development was valued over reputation and mistakes offered no cushion. Because over at Bakersfield Centennial High, Jordan Love was certainly not handled like a future NFL star. He was considered a long-term project. And here we go with Love in the shotgun. He sends Jai in motion, he'll hand it off to Jai. No, he'll keep now. And it's a burst up the middle for Lobby Wrongfoots, the safety. The team's offense wasn't designed to put him in the spotlight, and the roster wasn't filled with done prospects. Victories were a struggle, and missteps were inevitable. Jordan got playing time early, had to learn under pressure, and faced his failures publicly. In the beginning, his stat lines were anything but flattering. Interceptions were common. Losses piled up. Some games, he simply looked out of his league. But his coaches perceived something that the box score could never show. I think that's one of his best attributes, is his even kill attitude. Nothing's too high, nothing's too low. They saw undeniable arm talent, a calm demeanor under pressure, and a refusal to stop attacking even when plays broke down. College recruiters weren't flocking to Bakersfield, not while other quarterbacks were chasing stars and national rankings. Jordan was just chasing repetitions. By his senior season, his improvement was staggering. I got a football picture my freshman year. I was one of the smallest dudes in my friend group. I was the smallest dude playing receiver, backup, you know what I mean? And then I got another picture my senior. I'm taller than everybody, so it's crazy how, yeah, man. He threw for more than 2,400 yards and 30 touchdowns, ran for additional scores, and demonstrated enough potential to attract smaller colleges that were willing to gamble on development over polish. The Power 5 conferences were unconvinced. His game tape showed talent, but it was far from a finished product. Utah State, however, was not unconvinced. They saw a quarterback who could be sculpted, a player whose ultimate ceiling was tied directly to their own patience and trust. And for the first time in his journey, Jordan Love was about to join a program ready to offer him both. Utah State came along. They're my first FBS school to offer me. And then after that, I really didn't get the other one. So, I was rolling with Utah State. It was an opportunity to evolve his game far from the relentless hype that follows five-star prospects. At first, he appeared to be exactly what he was, a gifted passer who was still catching up to the speed of the college game. But unlike in the past, the coaching staff didn't bench him after a mistake. They doubled down on him. By his sophomore year, the game began to slow down for him. Love delivered a Heisman-caliber performance in his second season. He threw for 32 touchdowns against just 6 interceptions and propelled the Aggies to a number 14 rank in the AP poll. The arm strength that once seemed uncontrollable had become precise. He began throwing with anticipation rather than just hope, trusting his receivers to be in the right spot before they even made their cuts. Then, 2018 arrived. Jordan Love didn't merely get better, he detonated 2018. That was, you said, I'll break my love looking down the middle of the field. Got his man. Touchdown Aggies. It's Jordan Nathan. He threw for over 3,500 yards, was responsible for 32 touchdowns, and led Utah State to an 11-win season capped off with a bowl victory. Out of nowhere, a quarterback most sports fans had never even heard of was dismantling defenses every Saturday. If you saw him as a freshman, you would have never imagined he would achieve what he did, because he was just so driven and dedicated. Scouts from the NFL began paying close attention. The way the ball exploded out of his hand was special. He threw with such easy power, and his off-balance passes were so good they looked almost unreal. Even more crucial, he approached the game with absolute courage, believing in his arm and his work ethic. For Utah State, this was about more than just collecting wins. They were shaping a future NFL quarterback right there on the field. But with that triumph, a new element entered Jordan Love's world: expectations. And expectations have a way of transforming the game entirely, because as soon as the national attention intensified, any room for error vanished. I understand, Dan. Jordan Love possesses a powerful arm, but a powerful arm can sometimes result in a costly turnover. The 2019 season didn't begin with skepticism. It began with a tidal wave of hype. Jordan Love came back to school as one of the most discussed quarterbacks in all of college football. The stands were swarming with scouts, and draft analysts started penciling his name into the first round. Every pass was analyzed, every mistake amplified, and that immense pressure became apparent from the start. If I had to describe it, I'd say, there were just obviously too many errors packed into one season. Utah State was a completely different team. The coaching staff had changed, the receivers were in flux, the offensive line collapsed quicker, and opposing defenses played him with deceptive schemes. They lured him into traps, disguised their coverages, and demanded he play flawlessly. Love started to press. He attempted to carry the team on the strength of his arm alone, gambling on throws that had succeeded a year prior, and trying to fit the ball into windows that no longer existed. His touchdown numbers fell while his interceptions climbed. Certain analysts pointed to regression, but others looked at the surrounding circumstances. So how was he so much more effective in 2018 compared to 2019? Well, it's like anything else. His coach left to take the head coaching position at Texas Tech. But beneath the surface of the statistics, his inherent talents never disappeared. He still had an elite arm, and his improvisational skills were still a major threat. Jordan Love's natural physical tools. That's superstar potential, Mike. It is a remarkable arm. It truly is. The thing that changed was the weight of his responsibility. Love wasn't merely playing the quarterback position, he was propping up an entire offense that couldn't support itself. And that year became a kind of inkblot test for the entire NFL. Was he being reckless, or was he being compelled to be the hero on every single play? By the season's end, opinions were completely divided. The former Utah State quarterback, Jordan Love, had turned into one of the most polarizing figures in the NFL draft. He also had the chance to become the first Aggie selected in the opening round since Phil Olsen did it 50 years before. Much like in high school, some people are prepared for Love, and some simply are not. War rooms were filled with arguments, and commentators couldn't see eye to eye. No one could form a consensus on what kind of player Jordan Love truly was. For my part, I had no clue if the next quarterback would be chosen in the first round, the second round, or at some other point. He was caught in that uncertain space where draft forecasts mean nothing. One mock draft had him being selected in the top 10. Another predicted he would drop out of the first round altogether. Teams in desperate need of a quarterback decided to pass on him. Draft boards were shifting constantly. Then Green Bay made its play. The Packers traded up and the league stopped cold. Because this wasn't a team looking for an immediate starter. This was an organization that already had an MVP at quarterback. And yet, defying all logic, the Packers invested in their future. With the 26th pick in the 2020 NFL Draft, the Green Bay Packers select Jordan Love. A wave of confusion immediately swept through. Pundits were stunned, the fan base was in an uproar, and a flood of questions began. I'm not shocked they drafted one, but I'm trying to understand why they needed to move up that far to guarantee they got their guy. So, why him? Within the Green Bay front office, the reasoning was clear. They didn't select the quarterback Jordan Love was at that moment. They selected the quarterback they were confident he could become. They saw a natural arm talent that simply cannot be coached. This marks the first occasion the Packers have used a first-round selection on an offensive skill player since they chose Aaron Rodgers. They recognized a player who required patience, and they were the one franchise perfectly positioned to provide it. Love came in with a clear understanding of his role. There were no shortcuts, no immediate time in the limelight, just a clipboard, a future Hall of Famer to learn from, and years to absorb it all. For nearly any other quarterback, this would have felt like a career derailment. For Jordan Love, it evolved into the most pivotal period of his entire career. You know, from the moment I was drafted here, I immediately understood the exact situation I was walking into and who I would be playing behind. So I understood that it would be a process. Because while the rest of the league was busy analyzing the pick, Green Bay was already laying the groundwork for its next era. And Jordan didn't step onto the NFL stage, he stepped into the shadows. For 3 entire seasons, Jordan Love's job wasn't to play, but to watch. But at the same time, I feel like my first season was the longest rookie year. It's just a very long year, that first one in the league. I believe the next 2 years seemed to pass a bit more quickly, they kind of just flew by, but yeah, it has definitely felt like a long road. Every Sunday, he was right there behind Aaron Rodgers, not just a Hall of Fame talent, but also one of the most meticulous and challenging quarterbacks to ever play the game. Aaron is a fiercely competitive person. He's a Hall of Famer for a good reason, and I'm certain he's thinking, hey, you're gonna have to wait a very long time before you get my position. Love studied how Rodgers managed the game's clock, how he manipulated defensive backs with his eyes, and how he made defenses pay for being a fraction of a second too slow. By the time Rodgers was gone, Jordan Love wasn't entering the role unprepared. He had already invested 3 years into learning the system, quietly getting himself ready for the moment Green Bay would finally give him control of the offense. Breaking news, Aaron Rodgers is officially being traded to the New York Jets. And when his time finally came to be the starter, it didn't feel like apprehension. It felt like an unleashing. He was working with young receivers, new schemes, and a team that was figuring out its identity on the fly. Green Bay's request wasn't for him to be a game manager. It was for him to spearhead a new era. In the early stages, that progress came in fits and starts. Some series would flow seamlessly, while others would grind to a halt. The internal clock wasn't quite calibrated, and the expected mistakes began to surface, the kind that always appear when a quarterback emerges from a legend's shadow to carry the offense on his own shoulders. But beneath the surface of that inconsistency, his evolution was unmistakable. Love on 3rd down, headed for the end zone. Love, oh, a double fake, and he hits Musgrave for what looks like the final blow. Love capped off his first year as the starter with 4,159 passing yards, 32 touchdowns, and only 11 interceptions. He had quietly pieced together one of the most successful inaugural seasons any quarterback in franchise history had ever produced. During the final 8 contests, he became incandescent, connecting on 18 touchdowns with just 1 turnover and achieving a passer rating that soared past 100 throughout that span. The most impressive part wasn't the final numbers, it was the way he commanded the game. He consistently attacked the middle of the field. He made blitzing teams pay the price. He put his faith in his young receivers long before anyone else considered them dependable targets. His movement within the pocket grew more poised with each game, and his processing speed sharpened as the offense blossomed around him. The Packers closed the season at 9-8, clinching a playoff berth. That set the stage for a definitive test on the road against Dallas in the wildcard round. Love proceeded to systematically dismantle the Cowboys' defense for 272 yards, 3 touchdowns, and 0 mistakes, exhibiting complete authority from the first series on. Love in danger. Stays in the pocket, and fires one to Daubs, who secures the reception near midfield. It was sheer command. By the time the season was over, Jordan Love wasn't simply the man following Rodgers. He was being judged on his own merit, as a quarterback who had studied, bided his time, and then performed brilliantly when his name was finally called. And that's what set 2023 apart. It was no longer about potential, it was about performance. Play. He's that guy. He is that guy. For everyone across the league, if you are not paying attention, you need to start. Open your eyes because he is the real deal and number 10 is coming for you. The 2024 season was no longer about catching people by surprise, it was about proving his greatness. Defenses arrived with a game plan specifically for Jordan Love. The Packers weren't the underdog anymore, and they quickly ran into their first stretch of hardship. But I believe it demonstrates a lack of true cohesion. It's like they aren't in sync with one another on how to solve problems that arise during the game. An injury sidelined, Love, the offensive chemistry faltered, and Green Bay had to retool its approach on the fly, but as soon as he got back into his groove, the standard of play returned. Throughout the season, Love once again approached 4,000 passing yards, tallied touchdowns in the mid-20s, and maintained an interception total that mirrored his 2023 rate. Despite facing tougher opponents and a heavier workload, his precision on third down and in the red zone remained his defining strengths, two areas where younger quarterbacks often decline after defenses have had a year to study them. The most remarkable thing about 2024 wasn't the highlight reel plays, it was his mastery of game situations. His ownership of the line of scrimmage, the pre-snap reads he makes, the audibles he calls, and then the clutch throws down the field. Under pressure, Love's passer rating continued to be among the league's elite. He effectively limited sacks. His recognition of disguised coverages became sharper, particularly in the game's final minutes. Green Bay now relied on him to win games, not just to steer the ship. And while 2024 cemented his status, the next season would be defined by his complete control. By 2025, Jordan Love was no longer just a component of the offense. The offense was now a reflection of him. And let's stop calling Jordan Love an emerging talent. Cut it out. He is a top 6 or 7 quarterback in this league. Green Bay gave him complete autonomy at the line from protection calls to tempo and personnel groupings, and he fully justified that confidence. All season long, Love boasted one of the lowest sack percentages in the NFC, all while attacking deep downfield at a clip that surpassed nearly every other playoff-bound quarterback. His completion rate rose into the mid-60s. His interception frequency remained in the bottom percentile among starters, and his passing efficiency between the hash marks was among the very best in the sport. The biggest improvement wasn't in his physical gifts. Those had been evident for years. It was his complete command. Green Bay's offense no longer looked like a young group finding its way. It looked deliberate. At the conclusion of the season, Love had again produced at a 4,000-yard pace, engineered several fourth-quarter comebacks, and secured a win count that positioned the Packers as serious contenders. And without anyone noticing, the comparisons finally ceased. It wasn't because he had transformed into Aaron Rodgers, but because he had fully arrived as Jordan Love. Monday Night Football was supposed to be the Aaron Rodgers revenge tour. But this is the narrative we overlooked. It was also the Jordan Love I've arrived game, and he proved that last night. He was a quarterback who played with absolute authority. And when a player reaches that level, the league stops anticipating a decline. It begins to adjust, because he is here to stay. Jordan Love's narrative was never about being a replacement. It was about the rewards of patience. 3 years of dedicated learning, no shortcuts taken, 1 year of standing tall in the face of adversity without making excuses, followed by a triumph built on preparation, not panic. He did not come into the league as a complete package. He forged himself into one. And the man we see now is a quarterback who operates with perfect poise. His raw talent is now guided by discipline. His confidence is built on a solid foundation. He is elite. The arm, the mobility, the accuracy. When you pair that with Matt LaFleur's offensive scheme, you have a team that is built to win a Super Bowl. The league initially questioned the draft pick. Then it questioned the long-term plan. Now, it is studying the results. Jordan Love is no longer the future for the Green Bay Packers. He is the now. And if this is the outcome of a patient approach finally bearing fruit, the rest of the NFL ought to be taking notes. You're watching Strip Sack, where we examine the players nobody saw coming until they became too good to ignore. If you came for authentic NFL journeys, true developmental stories, and the moments that define careers, make sure you subscribe because the next video is already on its way.